Hello again, everybody. This is Dan Clouser, and welcome back to the Journey of My Mother's Son podcast. Today I'm joined with a fellow full-time RVer, friend of ours, Vince Padilla. Vince, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Dan. I'm such a huge fan of the work that you do and everything that you represent. I'm very flattered to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to this conversation, but before we get started, just introduce yourself in your own words. Who is Vince today?
Sure. Well, I tell most people I'm just a dude. I'm a guy who is making my way best through life as I can. Full-time RVer, as you mentioned, been doing this for about 6 years, and with my lovely wife Amy, and I have another homelier wife too, but I don't talk about her as much. I'm joking, of course. Um, we started on the road 6 years ago. When I left, I was a studio photographer when we sold all of our things and hit the road. Since then, I've had some kind of hobby jobs here and there, but Amy's income was enough to keep us on the road. So, income that I brought in has mostly just been for fun. Currently trying to kick off a leather business, restart a leather business, I should say, doing custom leather goods, needing to bring the income up a little bit more for myself. But beyond that, I'm a retired soccer coach. I coached varsity soccer at the high school level for 20 years and club soccer for even longer than that. Um, and just trying to enjoy life and, like I say, make it through the best that I can.
Yeah, I love it. And we initially met on a volunteer project through a year to volunteer, which I've had many guests who we've met
Yeah.
through that organization on the show, as well as Phil and Char themselves. So we met in Lake Charles, Louisiana at Sam Houston Jones State Park.
Mhm.
And, you and I started having a little conversation on one of the few days that we were actually together working. And I told you I was a former baseball coach. You talked about being a former soccer coach. So there's kind of a immediate connection there for sure. Anytime you're out there working with kids and working with youth and trying to, teach them life lessons through the game.
Yeah,
It's always the way I've always based my philosophy. You always have that connection. And then obviously as
absolutely.
full-time RVers, and then, like a lot of those people, we just stay in contact through social media and, use social media for, the things that it should be used for, not some of the ignorance that a lot of people post on there. So you try to dial that out of your feed and try to fill it
Yes.
with with positive stuff. Um, so it's cool that we can kind of stay in contact without, you know, seeing each other and, crossing paths. And it's cool, we'll post a spot, that we're at that you guys have been to, and you comment on it, and vice versa. And we just
Yeah.
happened by chance to, you know, both end up being in Banff National Park this past summer when we were on our way to Alaska, and you guys were on your way to Saskatchewan, I think.
Yes, correct. You got it.
Yeah. And super cool to get together, because there were, what, another four Y2V couples there. So it was super cool to get together and hang out with you guys there. And again, it's so cool to just have those encounters that just, the stars align and you get to reconnect. So, hopefully shortly here we'll be able to reconnect with you guys again as we're heading through the state of Tennessee.
Yeah,
But
it sounds like our paths will cross soon. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Looking
yeah,
forward to it.
absolutely. So, you know, again, I've had a lot of our Y2V and full-time friends on the show, and a lot of times it's just talking about their RV journey, their full-time journey,
Sure.
what got them started, and I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit. But the main reason I wanted to have you on the show now was just you've gone through a very inspiring to me journey that you've been willing to share on social media and be vulnerable and talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly as you were preparing for a recent back surgery, and now you're post surgery and on the mend.
Yeah,
And before we started recording, said you were doing better than you could have expected. So thank
I
God for
am.
that, and let's
Absolutely.
keep that going in that direction. But let's talk a little bit about that journey. Like, why did you want to share some of those vulnerabilities? And you also talked about your anxiety and some of that sort of stuff as well throughout that
Sure.
journey of, again, all these things racing through your head as you're going up there, and the frustration of dealing with the U.S. healthcare system.
Sure, absolutely. Well,
So start
wow.
wherever you want.
Yeah, exactly. Um, it goes back a long way. I have for a long time been very vocal about mental health awareness. My natural father passed away when I was 10, and my mother really struggled with that, as would any. She was 20. Oh boy, how old was she? She was 28 years old when, no, I'm sorry, she was 30 years old when he passed away. And it was really tough on her. I mean, who wouldn't that be tough on? And so she spent a lot of time, learning to cope with her new reality. And my sister and I, she did her best. She did absolutely everything she could possibly do. I wouldn't trade what she did for the world. But my sister and I were kind of trying to figure stuff out on our own a little bit. And that's kind of the origin story of where mental health kind of leaked into my body or into my brain, for lack of a better term. Fast forward to my adulthood, and I reached a point in my life where I was really struggling with things, mostly with sleep. And I went to see a doctor, and they recommended a sleep study. And one thing led to another. One set of conversations led to another, where I ended up with a psychiatrist at one point, just trying to figure out what was going on in my life. And at that point, they diagnosed me initially with ADHD. Turned out that wasn't really my issue. And again, fast forward a little bit more, finally came to, after a lot of work, came to the conclusion that I had suffered from an anxiety disorder and from clinical depression. Um, this was, we were in Wisconsin, at the University of Wisconsin. I got fantastic health care. They really helped me kind of get stuff straightened out through psychiatry and through therapy. And I spent the next 15 years really living life well mentally. I still had my ups and my downs. I learned to identify when depression was coming on. I learned to identify certain periods. I learned to identify triggers. I learned to identify when it would happen off cycle, quote unquote. I learned to identify my anxiety when it would flare, what kinds of things would really set me off. And I learned a lot of coping mechanisms that mostly I was able to handle on my own. And it was fantastic. Over the last year, however, I started to have some health difficulties. I had an old back injury from when I was a college soccer player. Had some surgery way back 30 years ago, and knew that at one point I was going to have to get addressed. Well, over since we saw you guys in Banff last spring, things really took a turn with my back, and it got to the point just before my well, just before my surgery, obviously, that it became very difficult to function. And what I didn't realize was how much of a toll that was taking on my mental health. And well, I talk about this stuff, and I started talking about this stuff back in 2010 when I first started having the mental health issues, honestly, because it was just too damn hard to hide.
Right.
It was difficult to talk about. Um, it was embarrassing to talk about, still is. But honestly, the difficulty and the embarrassment are less than the effort it takes to conceal it for me. And in the same way that I never hesitated to discuss, yeah, I had a back injury and it causes pain in my legs and it causes pain in my back, but it goes away and the other thing, or never hesitated to tell someone I've got asthma, and that affects me when I exercise. I don't see why it should be different to say, yeah, the chemicals in my brain change their balance at different points and it affects me in different ways. To me, it's just a medical issue, the way those are medical issues.
Yeah.
As a society, we put a lot of value behind that, a lot of, I don't want to say judgment because I don't believe people judge, but it's embarrassing to say I'm not in control of myself, especially as a man.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that women face the same thing. I don't know. I've never been a woman. I've never walked a mile in their shoes. I probably couldn't with my bad ankles, but to be honest with you, I think there's something that men carry that we're not willing to talk about our mental health. We're
Yeah.
not anxious to let people know, hey, this is hard, that we don't have an answer. And so, you asked, why do I be vulnerable? Well, I'm vulnerable because I don't really know what else to do. It helps me.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I mean, that's so important. And again, I mean, you're not the first guest I've had on to talk about,
Yeah.
mental illness and mental health,
Hmm.
and the stigma that surrounds it. I mean, I think it's better today than what it was,
Yeah.
years ago. but I do think we still have some work to do. So I think, the things that you're bringing, to the forefront are very important. And again, even though it's, you're really kind of doing it for yourself, you are helping a lot of other people to try to, get rid of that stigma and talk about it and have the conversation, which I think is just one thing in life in general, that if we just have more conversations,
There's my
um,
and the stigma tattoo.
yeah,
I do feel very passionate about that, Dan, and I appreciate what you're saying. I feel like it'd be a lot easier for me if other folks had said before me, and the stigma, let's talk about it. So I talk about these things because first and foremost, my mental health needs to be addressed for myself.
mhm,
Secondly, my mental health and addressing it and making sure it's the best it can be is my obligation to my beloved wife. I owe that to her and the other folks that I love who love me. I owe it to them to address my mental health. It's an obligation I have to them. But beyond that, I care about the other people in this world. I care about the other men who walk around hiding stuff. I care about the other young boys, young men who I got to coach, young women who I got to coach, um, who struggle with stuff and aren't comfortable saying, "I need some help."
yeah,
I have my own little budding YouTube channel, and I was supposed to interview one of my former players, ironically, last Wednesday, and she canceled at the last second because she had to run home because of a suicide of a college age kid.
yeah,
And it was just, it guts me to hear that this child, he was 21 years old. I mean, that's a grown adult, but it's a child,
yes, it is.
um, didn't see another way out. That
Yeah,
was the only way they could escape their demons. And it's not easy to fight through that. It's not, but there's help. And there's always someone to turn to. You can dial 988. You can text 988 on your cell phone and get immediate crisis health or crisis help. And these are the messages that I just want other people to hear. I don't want people to question, to be embarrassed to say, God, I'm depressed. Or God, I don't, I can't deal with driving on this mountain road because my anxiety is crippling right now.
yeah,
Um, you don't have to live like that. It can be that mundane, but there's help to get past that. And so it's part of my mission because others have given me that gift to say, talk about it, get this out there, and to end the stigma. It really is important to me to make that happen.
yeah, yeah. And again, I think, what you said about others did that and helped you. Um, so I guess the fact that you recognized what it did for you, that you now want to be able to be that for other people. I mean, where, because there's a lot of people, they get help and that's okay, but then they're not necessarily, you know, and I don't know that willing, but I don't know what the right word is, but just, don't want to get involved in, you
Hmm.
know, helping someone else for whatever reason. And that's
Sure.
not always bad, it's just part of their DNA for whatever reason. So
Hmm.
what was it that made you want to, um, you know, again, be like the people were that helped you to,
Sure.
pay it forward or pay it back, whichever way you want to say.
I have two answers. One, watching what my mom went through, and then seeing her restart her life with a new marriage, and having a wonderful husband, and her ups and downs, um, made me realize that when you do reach out, you can really improve your life. Um, and the other is that I've been very fortunate. Like I said, I've talked about this stuff in my own personal journey because it's just I talk too much and I can't hide stuff, and it really is hard for me to hide stuff. Um, and I was fortunate enough when I had my photography studio. One of my therapists had suggested, well, why don't you make some pictures about what it's like to be you? And I made a surrealistic photography series that was kind of fantasy based, kind of fairy tale esque. That I was blown away to this. I put them out there into the ether just because, well, when I was done with it, I needed to put them somewhere. And I'd say this was about what it's like for me to struggle with this issue or that issue or the other. And lo and behold, it got some recognition and got picked up by a few different places. Um, and I got a tremendous amount of feedback privately from folks that said, thank you for putting this out there. This, just hearing someone say, I struggle with this was really liberating for myself. And when I'd hear that, it was humbling in a way that I can't put to words. First of all, knowing that there's other people that are feeling the same way that you are, and that even though you're kind of just out there putting the stuff out and hoping for the best, hoping not to be too embarrassed, and then to have people come back and say, hey, this is meaningful to me. That was encouraging and made me want to do it more. And then beyond that, the difficulty of hearing them say, but I don't want to talk about it. And I knew what I was getting out of making these pictures. I knew what I was getting out of having other people comment on them. I knew what I was getting out of just having the likes and thumbs ups and stuff that came with it. I mean,
Yeah.
as meaningless as that is, that made me feel less alone and made the things I was struggling with less painful. And I was like, why would you not want that? Why would you not want to find your way of alleviating some of this difficulty? And I knew the answer. I mean, the answer is just plainly obvious. It's embarrassing to say I'm not in control of my brain.
Right.
My brain has things makes me react or behave in ways that society doesn't really put a lot of respect to. And that's terrible. It's just a terrible way to live. Society is one thing. I'd love to change society, but more than changing society, I'd love for one person to say, you know what? I'm going to let the people around me know that sometimes when I'm quiet, sometimes when I say I don't want anyone around, it's because I want someone around. I want to not have to ask for it. And that's just such a terrible way to live. Instead of just saying, you know what, can you come and sit with me? I don't need you to do anything. I don't need to pour my heart out to you. But if you just sat next to me for a couple of minutes, that'll help me get through a moment.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, your life's a little better because you sat through those 2 minutes.
Yeah.
That's the little help. I mean, obviously, professional help, all the other things, important, hugely important. But sometimes it's something that little. Hey, come and sit with me. I'm a little nervous. I'm a little anxious.
Yeah.
This is a tough moment for me. That movie made me feel something that hurts, brings up something from my past. Just come and sit with me. I don't need to talk about it.
Yeah.
Maybe I do need to talk about it. But just being able to say, help me in that little way can change someone's life. And that's what doing those pictures taught me was that thumbs up on Facebook or on Instagram saying, I like this picture and I respect the message behind it. That buoys you. And
Yeah.
so that's asking for help, putting that stuff out, asking for so everybody, if you're struggling, there people will help.
Yeah. Yeah. More people than we'll ever know, really.
Yeah,
I mean, more people than
absolutely.
we ever know. And you get to a point there where, you do feel completely alone, but
Yeah.
you have to realize that there are, again, you just have to ask and, there's people out there who are willing to lend a hand more, again, more than we would ever know for sure.
Well, and we're socialized as men to be strong, to be tough. And I hope we can redefine what that means. If you're in the gym and you're trying to increase your bench press, right? You're not going to sit there and throw an extra set of plates on alone with nobody around you and take the risk of crushing your chest
Right.
or worse, ending up on YouTube on a blooper reel.
Yeah.
You're going to ask someone, hey, come and help me, come and spot me. I don't see how that's different. I don't see, I think it's strong. I'm increasing my strength when I ask for someone to help me out.
Yeah.
I'm being stronger. I really truly believe that. You only get stronger with help. You can do a lot on your own, but you can't do everything on your own.
Yeah.
And it's a message I think that many of us our age, need to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. Because again, I mean, we do need to have that tribe, that community around us. I mean, I think that's one of the things that we love most about the RV community is, again, like I was saying when we first started recording, you know, we kind of, we're following each other's journeys as we go through, and we love to be able to connect and, creating that community out there. And um, I don't care who you are, whether you're introverted, extroverted, somewhere in between. Um, humans long for connection.
Yes.
It's just the fact of life. Whether we want to accept it or deny it, it is the truth. We long for some sort of connection, and that's why, I think we we realized that as a society, and then I think we forgot it pretty quickly. But during the pandemic, when you're
Yeah.
now automatically cut away and not being able to hug someone or not being able to go see someone that you loved, and then like almost instantly we forgot about it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's true.
that's
And there's some of that wasn't completely irrational. I mean, it was a scary time.
yeah, it was.
There was a time there where, especially at the beginning, when nobody had any idea what was going on,
Yep.
where, some of that reptile brain came out of, I got to protect my own, I got to protect me, myself, and I first, and hopefully it goes beyond. And I think we're coming out of that. I think that by and large, society's moving forward, and we're doing our best as a larger group. But I think some of that remembrance of, or some of that memory of how important community is coming back, and I has a long way to go.
Yeah.
But I think we're headed in the right direction.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you. So how long before you um before the surgery actually took place did you know that you were going to have to go, have the surgery, and then what were you preparing to get yourself where you needed to be
Sure.
physically,
Yeah.
number one, and then, again, dealing with that mental anxiety of,
Yeah.
getting to it and through it.
There's a couple of different answers. First of all, when I had my first surgery, I was still actively playing, and I was still trying to play competitive soccer, and had a back injury. And my surgeon at the time, I had basically I ruptured a disc in my back at the base of my spine, and I was having massive sciatic pain. The surgeon who took care of me at the time said, we're not going to fuse your back for this injury. Often we fuse it, but we're not going to because you are still trying to be extremely active and participate. I mean, it should be obvious for my finely tuned bodies that that's been my history. Um, but at the time, we wanted to keep me active, so we didn't fuse it. He said, when you hit your 40s, you're going to want to get it fused. Fast forward time, it lasted until my 50s. I hit my about the time we saw you guys in Banff, about a little almost a year ago now. My back was starting to get tough. It was starting to get harder and harder to hike out in the mountains, to enjoy the things that Amy and I enjoy. And we were starting to question, maybe it's time to get my back looked at again. We weren't 100% sure because everyone had told me when you need to get your back fused, you'll know you need to get your back fused. And so I was a little bit on the fence with it. Started causing gradually more pain, a little bit less mobility until about September, October of 2024. So roughly 5 months ago now, as we record, um, uh, it became unbearable. If I went to the grocery store, which has been, traditionally one of my chores, if I did a full lap around the grocery store, picking up our weekly food, I couldn't leave the couch for 3 days. I was in so much pain. Um, Even just day-to-day functions became very, very difficult. And it was very sudden when that happened. So it was clear that we were going to need to have this happen. A little bit of research decided to come back to Vanderbilt University Medical Center. That's where I had my first surgery done when I was a graduate student at the time. And been very happy with that. But to prep for it physically, um, there wasn't a lot I could do with the prehab that one might normally do because I was so immobile. I was kind of reduced to very weakly hobbling on a cane, which is still mind blowing to me that that's where I ended up. So I wasn't able to do a lot of the, pre-strengthening of my core and those kinds of things. I just couldn't. But I did really focus on nutrition, and we really buckled down on the types of things we would need to make my body heal well and quickly, and then to heal thoroughly. So we really, I became not a vegetarian, but pretty darn close. Pounding salads, pounding nuts, seeds, just really healthy diet, we'll put it that way. Which again, looking at my finely chiseled body, you know, is probably a long time history with me. Um, and taking calcium. And then before the surgery, they gave me, you know, pre-surgery food and drink and stuff like that that I needed to do to prep my body. But that was about all I was able to do. Um, Mentally was tougher. I didn't realize how much my back was affecting me, even as far back as a year ago. I knew I was getting frustrated with things. I knew the pain was pretty much constant. It was low grade to start with, so it was constant but not debilitating. And I didn't realize what a toll that was making on my or taking on my mental health. I like to congratulate myself for having been able to historically recognize what's going on with my mental health, but this completely slipped under my radar. And then as things really took a turn in the fall with my back, I got very angry. I got very testy, very short fused. And then other outside things going on in my life and in the world, kind of piled on top of those things where um, I was really in a bad spot. Um, I ended up, and again, I wasn't realizing this was happening. I mean, knew it was happening, but I didn't realize it was an issue, capital
Right.
I issue.
Right.
Um, and I wasn't even really trying too hard to get through it. It just was happening. Um, it finally got to the point in November, mid to late November, where um, I probably I fast forward ended up with a therapist. I'll get to how I got there. That I was speaking with a couple weeks ago, and I asked her, you know, I know it's not a clinical thing. I know that there's no such thing, you know, diagnostically as a mental breakdown, nervous breakdown. I asked her, but what does that mean when someone says that to you? And she talked about how, you know, you have to have some kind of pre-existing set of circumstances in your own mind and the own way you're thinking. It has to be acted upon by outside forces in a particular way. And I'm going to butcher how she described it to me because she's a pro and I'm just a dude. But uh, you know, you have to feel like there's nothing you can do about it, and you have to feel alone, even if you're not. And so we talked through that over the course of a couple of sessions. And at the end, she said, yeah, I think it's fair to say you may have had what people would clinically say is a nervous breakdown. Which, wow, it's crazy to say that. I mean,
Right.
I know that your podcast has an immense reach, and it's even though I advocate for the things I do, it's kind of scary to say that, but it's true. Um, but I realized that things were going bad, and I had an aunt uh, who, for her career, she was a psychologist that worked with veterans, and she worked with chronic pain. Now, she didn't know all the rest of this was going on in my life, but she did know that I talked about mental health a lot. She knew that I was having the surgery, and she knew that I was struggling with pain for a while. And she suggested, why don't you find yourself a psychologist who can help you with dealing with chronic pain? And that was the kick in the pants I needed. That I don't need help with dealing with my chronic pain. I mean, I do, but I'm a mess right now, and I have well exceeded the skills and techniques that I learned to cope with my mental health 15 years ago.
Right.
Those weren't working for me. I wasn't even trying them because I was so far beyond where they were effective. And I immediately found a therapist. I was extremely lucky that the first therapist I found um, was available in my insurance and a good fit. It's got to be both for most people. It's got to be both. But she's been helped me flip a switch from night to day in terms of my mental outlook. She helped me through going through the insurance process. As of a few days before my surgery, I didn't have approval from my insurance company for this surgery. And the estimated bill, which I posted on online, I'm sure you remember that. The estimated bill from Vanderbilt was $533,816 for this surgery, which you know, I was probably going to have to collect some aluminum cans and have some bake sales to be able to afford if the insurance didn't come through with it.
Yeah.
And the frustrating part was they had had it submitted to them with plenty of time, more than a month in advance, and their policy is 5 to 10 business days. And when we finally shook a bunch of trees through my wife's company and through their insurance broker and their representative with the particular insurance company, um, they made stuff happen in 24 hours. And that just added to the overall anxiety, pain, stress for myself and for others. Amy,
Yeah.
she doesn't want to let on that she's stressed out about what's happening, even though I know she's tremendously stressed out about
Yeah.
it. She's dealing with the stress of dealing with a husband who can't function, is an emotional disaster, and is saying maybe we shouldn't do this surgery, which of course is the absolute wrong thing to do. But all that came together at the same time. And, thanks to the therapist, thanks to having the reminder to seek help, which is another reason why I like to say, talk about it.
Yeah.
Um, and the ability to find someone quickly. Um, things are different. I'm a different person than I was 23 days ago, which is 3 days before my surgery.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, and I mean, for someone who isn't dealing with anxiety to begin with, I mean, that whole insurance process will make the mental healthiest of any of us
uh, what a
get
nightmare.
a huge amount of anxiety. I mean, how just the craziness that, you know, down to the wire, you're literally on pins and needles
Yep.
thinking like, is this going to be covered or am I going to be staring at a $500,000 of debt?
Well, and they had already rejected the MRI that I needed to diagnose my back problem in the first place. To be fair, I knew that I was going to have to back a back fusion at some point, and that this was the point. And so we just skipped a whole bunch of steps and went straight to an MRI. And I just had the doctor say, send me to an MRI, and they wanted me to do whatever 6 months of physical therapy and everything when we knew the fact of the matter was my that wasn't going to do anything. I was had a disc removed. I'd had a bunch of bone removed. There was there was no amount of physical therapy that was going to erase the bone on bone grinding and whatever else was going on. So having them have rejected the MRI, boy, that made me really wonder if they were going to reject the surgery. And here we
Right.
are, 3, 4 days into. I've already started the pre-surgery nutrition drinks and food they sent me, and not knowing, like I said, if we were going to be selling cookies on the corner to pay for it.
It's a lot of cookies.
Yeah, it would be, or one really hell of a good cookie.
Yeah. 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 Really. But yeah, I can't even imagine. And again, as we were, following that journey on social media with you, you know, Sandy and I, whether she saw the post first or I would see the post first, it was always like, man, did you see Vince's last post? Like how crazy is that he's having to go through this, and it's just, again, that this could send us on a totally different tangent, so we'll try to avoid it. But man, it's
Sure.
just crazy that we've
Yeah.
got to go through this in the United States of America. I mean, it's
It's a
crazy.
tale we don't need to even tell. Everybody
Right.
knows this tale. And on a
Exactly.
personal level, Dan, I want to say thank you to you and Sandy for doing that. It's always humbling when anyone thinks of me, and I appreciate you two following. Just on the pure
No,
personal level, thank you.
no problem at all. So, as you're leading up to the surgery and you
Hmm.
talked about, you first started getting signs where, you know, now you can't go on as long of a hike as you used to,
Yeah.
or, just little stuff like that. I mean, just dealing with the fact that if the surgery doesn't go good,
Hmm.
like you could be looking at a complete lifestyle change of things that
Yeah.
you're used to doing that you may not be able to do anymore. I mean, Sandy went through some back issues actually when we were in Canada and Alaska shortly after we saw you guys. Nothing to the extent of what you dealt with, but I know how, again, there were times where, you know, me and our grandson could go on a hike and she couldn't
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
and just the frustration and some anger, like you said,
Yeah.
and just overall, like, why sort of thing. So
Yeah.
just talk a little bit about, you know, dealing with that reality that things could drastically change.
It was a real challenge, especially because the severity of it came on so quickly. I always knew that my back was going to be an issue. When you had the back injury that I had at the age that I had it at, you knew you were kind of in a bad spot, and you just make the best of it while you can. Well, I had decades of no problem, really. I mean, it would crop up now, it'd flare up now and then, and maybe we'd go camping somewhere, and back in the days before we were full time, and maybe I couldn't hike every day or had to take it a little easier. But I mean, not really a fundamental change. But once this fall came and I got so limited so quickly, it was pretty devastating. As I look forward to the future of what is coming. Um, Once the surgery happened, um, and in the days thereafter, I'm a nerd. I used to be a social a data guy for a career before I did photography, and so I was looking into the studies and looking into the medical literature about what would happen with the surgery, and I saw that 90% chance or more that my spine would fuse. Um, and given whose spines didn't fuse, I felt pretty confident my spine's going to fuse. And if it fuses, I'm going to have somewhere between a 25 and 75% reduction in my pain, most likely. Um, and At first it was like, wow, that's not great. It's not terrible. I'm not going to begrudge any of it, but how much do I just want to be quote unquote normal, you know? But then after the surgery, I'd already started the therapy beforehand, and Amy and I had done a ton of talking, and I'd done a lot of writing. I became a journaler last year as a part of just trying to get stuff out and not wanting to bore all of my friends to tears on social media. I started writing stuff down, and all of that kind of gave me a moment of clarity right after the surgery where, first of all, my back felt immediately better. They put an implant in my back and screws and all kinds of stuff, and it immediately stabilized everything. And I woke up feeling much better. And it just hit me at one point, if this is it, I still needed a cane in the days after surgery. I still do like, on occasion just to be safe because I want to protect it. Um, but if this is what I get, I'll take this. It's an improvement, and I went from the point where my back health from the age of 22 until the age of 52 was deteriorating. It was just a constant slope back, a constant slow slope down until the end of last year when it was a straight drop down. And when I had the surgery, I still have pain. I still had pain the day after. I probably still have some degree of pain. Who knows for how long, maybe the rest of my life, I don't know. But things are getting better. And so for the first time, the pain that I'm having is the pain of improvement rather than the pain of deterioration. And that shift in my mental health is one of the coping mechanisms that I learned years ago is, okay, can we take something that is inherently negative, pain? Well, it's not inherently negative. It serves a purpose in your body, but something that we don't like to deal with.
Right.
And can I find a way that it's making my life better? And it turns out when I sat down and thought about it and wrote about it and talked about it, yeah, it's making my life better because it's protecting me from ruining this surgery.
Yeah.
And so it's the pain of improvement rather than the pain of deterioration. And that realization, along with through all those mechanisms, that's what really changed it for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. So, Vince, we covered a lot of different stuff here.
Yeah.
Is there anything that we missed that you think would be important to the listeners before we start to wrap things up?
You know what? It's asking for help is a sign of strength. Physical, mental, whatever. If you need help, you're doing it and you ask for help, it's making the people around you, it's making their lives better. And a strong person makes the lives of the people around them better. So use that and take it and ask for help when you need it. Doesn't matter on what, ask for help when you need it. Nobody's
Yeah.
perfect and nobody's indestructible.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. So, Vince, you did mention that you got a budding YouTube channel. I know you guys have a Facebook page. We might be lost.
Yeah, we could be
So
lost.
we
Yep,
could be
that's us
lost.
on Facebook. Yep.
So just let people know if they want to reach out to, if they want to start checking out your YouTube channel, how can they find you on the internet?
Sure. So my wife and I maintain better, sometimes worse. We maintain a little Facebook page just to kind of keep people up to date on our travels, and that's always a ton of fun. Despite me having been a professional photographer, my wife takes way better landscape pictures than I ever did. So her photography is up there. It's gorgeous. That's We Could Be Lost on Facebook. And then I'm just trying to document this journey that I'm on. I kind of feel like this whole surgery has been kind of a chance to restart my life for various reasons. And I thought maybe it might help some other people to kind of hear about that. Right now, I'm just getting it started. I used to do some other YouTube stuff, but that's, way back in the past. And so if people are interested, you can find me there at Mr. Vince Pad, Mr. Vince Pad, PAD. So I'd love to see any feedback people can give, and hopefully maybe they'll find something of value.
Absolutely. I'll definitely put links to both of those in the show notes to make it easier for people to just click and track you
Sure.
down. So that brings us to the final question. As you know, the subtitle of the podcast is "Many Little People in Many Little Places." It comes from the opening lyrics of the Michael Franti song "Gloria," which go, "When many little people in many little places do many little things, then the whole world changes." So it's one of the little things that Vince does on a daily basis to make the world a little bit better place.
You know what is incredibly moving to not moving, but what I love when people say hi. So I go out of my way when I see someone to try and just say hi. It's real simple, and I think there's just something to that little word that says, I see you, I acknowledge you, and I recognize your existence that can mean a lot to somebody.
Yeah. No, I love that. When I'm in a grocery store signing
Hmm.
books, I am, part-time greeter,
Yeah,
and just saying hello, good morning,
yeah,
um, regardless how many people actually stop and get a book signed, I probably say hello or good morning or good afternoon to, 500 to 1,000 people during during a book
you
signing
never
that walk
know.
by.
It's the best. You can be in an Apple store. You can be seeing the security guard who's probably seen 2,000 people in the Apple store all day and maybe not had one person say hello.
Yep.
And if you're that one person that says hi, you made that person's day.
Yep.
And that's all it takes sometimes.
Yep. And there's some people that just kind of blow you off and look the other way
Eh,
and whatnot, but
that's okay.
that's okay because the number of people who do, like, literally their face lights up like, "Oh, hey, how
Yeah.
you doing?"
Yep. Absolutely.
So yeah, definitely I think that's a very, very important little thing for sure. So I love
Absolutely.
that. I love that. So Vince, man, I really appreciate you taking the time and jumping on here. I wish you the best in the recovery. Um,
Thank you.
I know you're going to continue to inspire others by documenting this. I commend you for the bravery to be vulnerable and do that and help others. And for everybody out there listening, be sure to check out my other podcasts and blogs at journeymymotherson.com. While you're there, check out our Pay It Forward program where you can pick up a copy of one of my books. Sandy and I will end up donating it to someone somewhere along our travels. Vince, once again, this is a great, great conversation. I wish you nothing but the best moving forward.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you for wearing Brewers blue and yellow tonight.
Yeah, you bet. It's actually Delaware Valley Golden Retriever tie dye, so it's a
We'll
dog
go with
tie-in,
Brewers.
but it's still Brewers for
Close enough.
you. So no problem with that. So yeah, this is great. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dan. I appreciate your time, and thank you for the light you are in this world. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thanks.